Hey, it's Navid here, and in this session, you'll get an ultimate AI law overview for creators. I'm really excited to be joined by Peter Nieves, who is a nationally recognized leader in the field of intellectual property, who is extremely familiar with AI law and its effect on content creators. What I thought is really cool is that Peter is a content creator himself. He's an entrepreneur. He's also a global IP portfolio manager. He's a public speaker and many, many other things. He has won many awards as an IP attorney, and he's so knowledgeable at this. And we are bringing him on for this session to give you all of this for free here. And he would normally charge quite a lot of money if you were to hire him. Although what we are sharing here is not legal advice, just a little disclaimer. But we are going to bring some really good stuff that hopefully will be really useful for you if you're diving into this AI world. So without further ado, let's dive into the session. And warm welcome, Peter.
Thanks so much, Navid. Yeah, that's exactly right. Everybody gets the advantage of learning the law without getting billed at $600 an hour. So
if they can get access to you, right? You're a busy man.
yes.
So I really appreciate you. Now we're recording this. It's like around like the new year, basically. And we are, it's a lot of things happening in the AI world. So why don't you give us a brief introduction to kind of the work you do, Peter, and maybe into how this is shaping up, with you're a leading IP lawyer essentially, but now with AI, it's even more important the work you are doing.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've been dealing with artificial intelligence for about 12 plus years. I represent some of the largest corporations in the world who have been dealing with AI, even educational institutions, and it's tremendous technology, neural networks, understanding how generative AI works. But really what's going on with the new AI software programs is it's just a new graphical user interface using technology that has existed for quite some time. It's not that new. It appears new because it's now being readily available to the public, but quite frankly, it's not that incredibly new if you've been dealing with this technology for some time. Now, everybody is excited about this technology, and as am I. Like a lot of us are using these tools within our corporations, within our businesses, startups, people that are looking for an extra stream of income. Great technology. The issue, though, is that a lot of the information that's being utilized or images that are being provided to you as a result of using things like Midjourney, or text that's being provided to you as a result of using things like OpenAI's ChatGPT, are actually things that are scraped. So they're grabbing stuff from the internet from 2021 and prior, taking that information, doing certain things with it, and then packaging it and giving it to you. The problem with that is that there's a lot of trademark and copyright violations that are associated with that. So once I started seeing a lot of these AI software packages being utilized at a larger scale, I gave a prediction I think it was about 10, 11 months ago, I did a prediction. I have a separate group where I was training people on understanding the intellectual property law issues associated with AI, like the trademark issues, the use of like names, slogans, logos, the images issues, the text issues. Those are all copyright issues. So I was explaining a lot of that to people. And so I made 3 predictions. I said 3 things are going to happen. Number 1, people are going to finally realize that what they're uploading is becoming publicly available. That happened. That happened several months ago. People didn't realize it, and all of a sudden they realized, oh my gosh, this is publicly available. Like Samsung had 2 of their employees upload source code from Samsung associated with their technology that was trade secrets. It then became publicly available. Samsung reaches out to OpenAI and says, hey, we got to remove this stuff. OpenAI says it's not possible. We can't do it. It's in there. It's already in there. We can't pull it out. So that was number 1. And it happened. Number 2 was that there were going to be issues where people realized that their own material was being scraped. And so their content that was available on the internet, either on their personal sites or in subscription sites, actually was being made readily available to others. So those people were then going to sue the larger corporations. Well, that happened. Sarah Silverman sued. John Grisham sued. The New York Times has sued OpenAI and Microsoft. Like, this is happening all over the place. We predicted this like 10, 11 months ago. But I said there was going to be a 3rd phase. And this is the one that concerned me the most because I'm a father of 2. two amazing women that are entrepreneurial in spirit. And I know they know things about AI and other programs. And I said, the next thing that's going to happen is that there are going to be lawsuits against individuals for using the results of AI when they didn't realize that there was an issue with using the results of certain AI software programs. And that's when I said, I've got to get out there and let people understand, like, what can you do? What can't you do? Well, lo and behold, now there's lawsuits that are being filed against individuals for using the results of certain programs because they're not doing trademark searches for the resulting text. Or like, if you go on to, as an example, there's a site, Logo AI. You can go there, type in a word. It gives you a logo. It literally spits out a logo. Well, what I did was a trademark search for the result and found out that there was a federally registered trademark for the very result that Logo AI was giving you. So you're paying them to use the result they're giving you, but in their own terms and conditions, they're telling you, we're not doing a trademark search. You may run into liability issues for using the results of what we're giving you. So this is why I'm grateful for people like yourself. And this is why I'm actually out there bringing knowledge about these intellectual property law issues so that we know which of the programs we should use when we get the results. What should we do with the results to make sure we minimize potential exposure for ourselves, but at the same time, use an incredibly beneficial software platform that helps us, our businesses, our families, our friends, like use it in a way that's going to be responsible and beneficial without getting sued, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want that to happen, especially as a smaller creator. Like, even if you're making, 7 figures, it's still not nice to be sued by like this big corporation. You're gonna be screwed, basically. So let's get into some questions here. And you already alluded to some of this in your intro, but can you really own something you create using an AI software, like the
Yeah, that's a
copyright
great
and things like
question.
that? And it can be, I have a lot of follow-up questions to this, but I think we can start off from the beginning. For example, you want to create a book or an ebook, some kind of lead magnet using AI. What do you do there? And maybe the imagery as well that goes into this. Maybe, I mean, I know yourself using Midjourney and tools like that. And so
Sure.
let's talk about this so the audience can understand a little bit how it actually works.
Yeah, I personally love using AI software. I mean, I use it for creating text, creating images. I use it for ad campaigns, use it for marketing, for sending summaries to clients and other things like that. However, I'm I'm aware of the legal issues, so I don't put anything confidential into these things. So let's just talk about, can you own what's actually, like you just asked, can you own what's created through AI, right? Is that even possible? There's a major issue here. Number one, when it comes to copyright law, there are multiple components to copyright law, and this is how you can actually own something. So if an image is spit out or text comes out, copyright law would cover what's actually provided to you. So if you use Midjourney and you get an image, you'd want to own that image so you can use it for marketing purposes. Somebody else can't grab it and take it. Well, the Copyright Office came out and said you cannot own a copyright on something that's created by artificial intelligence because it's created by a machine. And so by its very nature, copyright is only provided to somebody if it is original, if it's fixed, and it's created by an author. And that author has to be a human being, can't be a machine. There was actually a really funny case where somebody lost their camera. A monkey found the camera, took a picture of itself. It is the funniest picture. Everybody should look this up. The camera, like the monkey smiling at the camera. Picture goes viral. It's a huge hit. The owner of the camera wants to file a copyright for the picture. And the Copyright Office says, no, like you may act like a monkey, but you're not the monkey. And so you can't own the copyright for this thing. And so the same logic is being used for artificial intelligence. They're saying that the party who is actually making the decision as to what is going to be rendered is the neural network combined with the AI bot. And for that reason, the creator is actually the artificial intelligence, not the human being. Now, this is a really interesting situation because copyright law has allowed you to get a copyright for a picture using what? Your camera, or in my case, a cell phone. So the rationale used by the Copyright Office is that, yeah, this is a machine. However, you're looking at things like lighting, shading, who's the subject matter that's involved. And so you're heavily involved in the picture that's being taken. And here's my response to that. My camera's on right now. Here's my response. Here's my camera. I'm not even looking at the subject matter. I just go like this. Boom. I've got a picture. Okay. That picture right now, this is the picture that I just took. I own the copyright on that. Okay. Did you see me look at the lighting or the shading? No, I didn't do any of that. So are you telling me that a prompt engineer who spends a lot of time creating the perfect prompt to come out with the perfect rendered image, where that prompt is remarkably verbose, like many paragraphs long, if not pages long, and then fine-tuned and then edited and fine-tuned and edited and fine-tuned, and finally you get the perfect image? You're telling me that they didn't create that image? There's a problem with that. And so the Copyright Office actually allowed for public comment a few months back. And I believe within the next 5 months, you're going to see a major change at the Copyright Office on this very issue. I believe you're going to see them come back and say, you know what? We think if the prompt is in enough detail, then you may result in a situation where you can own the result of artificial intelligence that's rendered from the properly crafted prompt. So I think that's going to change. But as of right now, if it's created by AI, you can't own it.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
very
a
very
problem.
interesting. I was thinking, for example, if I dictate a book, I'm basically it's my thoughts, it's exactly what I say, and then I upload it to an AI tool, maybe ChatGPT, maybe another one. Is that something? I mean, of course, I'm making it publicly available, so it should be something I want to upload there, not sensitive information, not like medical or anything like that. But what could I mean, since it's my thoughts, could I then own the copyright to this, but I'm just getting like maybe using the AI to write part of it or at least, organize my thoughts better?
Right. So as a lawyer, like I've been doing IP for 25 years, and I look at every word that someone's saying, right? So the first thing that you said was if I dictate it. So if all it's doing is transcribing what you're saying, by all means you own it, because it's literally the exact same words. Now,
Yeah.
if instead
Mm,
you have, here's the thing, under copyright law, you don't own ideas.
mm,
Ideas are not owned. What you own is the fixed form of your dictation or the fixed form of what you created. So I have an idea for a scene. It's a sunset, it's a beach, there's two palm trees, there's a hammock there, and there's like my daughter on the beach relaxing, watching that. And I paint it, right? When I paint it, the rendered painting I own under
mm.
copyright law. But the thought of it, I don't own.
Yeah.
So it has to be rendered. If I speak it, so as an example, let's say I dictate something and I use Otter AI to transcribe it, right?
Mm,
And Otter AI is actually transcribing exactly what I say. By all means, I own the copyright because it's
mm, of
transcribing exactly what I'm saying.
course.
Now, if I take that transcription and I use Otter AI to create a summary, and then I
Mm,
take that summary and I upload that summary into ChatGPT and say, create a 5-page book based on this transcription, that modification is going to be substantially different from what I originally created. And therefore, it's going to be considered to be a new work. If it's considered to be a new work, the artificial intelligence is what created that modification. There's a way around this, though. And this is something that I've been coaching people on. If you're doing a modification, if the modification is so similar to the original work as to be considered what's called a derivative, right? So it's not exactly the same, and it's not so different that it's a new work. It's somewhere in between. Then you might be able to make an argument that the newly modified version of what you originally owned is so similar that the ownership rights fall under the original creation. So to make this very simple for everybody in the audience, I create a 10-page book, right? I dictate it, boom. I own the copyright, obviously, because it's just transcribing what I'm saying. That's it. So I own that, right? Now I upload it into ChatGPT and I just say, all right, ChatGPT, take every time that the word very shows up, replace that word with some other word, right? I just replace one word. I would argue I still own the copyright on that because it's so similar to the original work that it falls under the ownership right of the original. And if I use something like Grammarly does modifications and you still own the copyright, for just changing sentence structure a little bit. But the issue is that ChatGPT doesn't technically work that way. It reworks your document. And if it's reworking your document so it's now considered to be a new work, that new work was created by artificial intelligence, and therefore you can't own that modification. If it's very similar, and this is a really important issue, guys. If it's so similar to your original work, you might be able to argue that new creation, the legal rights fall under the original work. You own the original work. So if somebody copies that slight modification, they infringe your original work, but not your newly created work through ChatGPT. That might be a way around the system to win.
Yeah.
So you got to understand how to work the system to make it beneficial for you.
It's interesting because I've heard, for example, if I create an image in Midjourney, of course, you don't own the copyright to this, as you mentioned before. But let's say I create the image there, I have my prompt and all this, and then I take it into Photoshop and I modify this. Is that a way around this to actually, okay, I have modified it enough, so then it's my unique work. I mean, not just adding a filter. I'm talking about some more advanced stuff. I'm doing some extra things. I'm going in there, changing maybe the scenery and different things, but I'm using part of the image I got from Midjourney, basically. Would that be something that helps?
It's a good question. It needs to be a new created work. So let's say, as an example, use Midjourney and you get the Mona Lisa, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many people actually know what's in the background of the Mona Lisa? Practically nobody. I know because basically I'm a nerd and I study the law. In the background, there's greenery, there's water. I know what the background looks like. So let's say you upload that image from Midjourney into PaintShop or some other program, Adobe. And so now you're modifying the background. The problem is that the face is still there, the hands are still there. And so that newly created work would have to be so different from the original work so as to warrant legal rights under copyright law, which means it has to be new. It can't be a copy. It has to warrant it's a new created work. So if her face is there, that's not a new created work. If you just change the background, that's not a new created work. A really good example of this is, I don't know if your audience has heard of this. There was a comic book that Christina Casanova filed a trademark application for, right? It's called Zarya the Dawn. Right. She actually created all the writing for the comic book. She did the text herself. She had the images created by Midjourney. Then she wanted to own the comic book, so nobody could copy the comic book. She would basically own the market for that comic book. So she filed a copyright application for the comic book. The Copyright Office first granted her legal rights for the whole comic book. Then what happened was they realized that she created the images through Midjourney because she was talking about the fact that she was one of the first people to actually get a copyright on something created by AI. Copyright Office found out, and they revoked her legal rights to the images because they were created by AI. So in her comic book, she owns the words, but she doesn't own the images. Do you see that?
It's very interesting because I think when you're just doing images for, let's say, your blog or something, yes, you can do it in your brand style and stuff, but I don't think it's as important for these things. But if you're doing a commercial of some kind, like let's say Nike wanted to do, they would for sure not do this because they need to own 100%, without any doubts what they are putting out there. So if you're doing something maybe more important than just like a blog image or something that goes on social media, I think you need to be a little more careful. At least that's how I would look at it. Like, I'm using Midjourney a lot. I'm sure you're using it a lot as well for
I use it a lot.
different creations. Yeah.
Yeah, I use it a lot. So this is what I do. I'll use stealth mode in Midjourney so that my images don't become part of their database, right?
Okay,
so let's say you're creating a Christmas card and your 2-year-old son, you have a picture of your son dressed up, he's 2 years old, you're uploading it into Midjourney, turning it into a Christmas card to give to the family. That image is now available to the public, whether you want it to be or not. So now your son ends up in a marketing campaign for a corporation that you knew nothing about. If you use stealth mode, what happens is the image of your son is not available to the public. However, you're using Discord. When you're using Discord, people can see the image, so they can right click it and save it, but there's less of a chance that somebody's going to copy a picture of your son by looking at Discord and seeing one image that they like,
Yeah.
right? So you just, as an owner of a company, as an individual, where you should definitely be, these tools are great. There's no reason not to use the tools. You just have to think to yourself, okay, I have a company, I've got a marketing campaign. I need a new image for the marketing campaign. I go into Mid-Journey, I say, okay, we're selling cars. Most of the cars are black in color. They're sports cars, and they're used in tropical locations predominantly. I type in all that stuff. I get certain cars there. I make some modifications. What I want to do now is take that image and do a copyright search. Or even on Google, if you look in the search bar in Google, if you look right there to the right, there's something that looks like a camera. You click on that, you can upload the image that you have received by using Midjourney. You can upload the image, and Google will now give you any public images that are very similar to what you just uploaded. You see something that looks exactly the same, you go, oh, there might be a copyright issue here. So you can use certain tools that are available to make sure that what's rendered is okay to use. You just want to make sure you're doing it, do your homework. This is not, even though this is a great tool and it's free, it doesn't mean you should use all these things for business purposes, because if it belongs to somebody else, then you can run into a legal issue.
Yeah, I think with certain tools, even if they are paid tools, they don't protect you that much. I think that's worth talking about. I think with
Yeah.
Adobe, at least they claim in their terms, if you have a legal issue, they are protecting you up to a certain amount, which was quite a lot, by the way. So that's great. That's comforting. But I don't know, you're a lawyer here. Why don't you speak a little bit about that? Because you probably check out a lot
Yes.
of terms. No one else is. We don't read this normally when you're signing up for these tools. How
Just to,
often do you really read the fine print?
I'm starting to look at my life right now and going, why am I not watching Netflix instead of reading the law? So this,
Yeah.
so this is what actually happens is these are called indemnification provisions. Okay. So what it means is that if somebody sues you, then you make a third party aware of this. Like whoever actually is indemnifying you, you make them aware of the lawsuit, and now they step in to defend you. Like they'll pay your legal fees up to a certain amount, take care of your potential liability. They're the ones that will defend you, right? Multiple companies have done this. I think OpenAI at this point, Microsoft, Adobe, others have said, look, if you get sued, this is such a big issue right now. This is such a major issue that these major corporations have come out and said, look, we don't want you to stop using our software. We want you to continue. The only way we can get you to continue, since you're seeing all this litigation taking place, is if we tell you that if you get sued, we'll protect you. And so for that reason, we're going to give you an indemnification provision. But what you got to make sure you do is that there's a timeline to notify them. There's certain conditions that have to be followed to qualify for indemnification. So just make sure that you're careful about this if you're going to lean upon companies for indemnification. But yeah, by all means, they can protect you. They can come out and say, look, if you get sued for using the results of my software, then I'm going to protect you. It's just, think of it this way. There are millions, Navid, there are millions of people using these software platforms. Do you honestly believe that they're going to defend millions of people? I
Tricky.
mean,
Very tricky.
there is in litigation, there's a point of pain that you're willing to go through. And then you basically are going to like say, I give up. Like you're going to throw your hands up, right?
Yeah.
So if there were like, let's say tens of thousands of lawsuits against people for using the content of OpenAI, I think there's a point where OpenAI basically says, okay, we can't defend absolutely everybody. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do this or not going to do this. This you're talking about a company that made over $1 billion last year. Like they made tons of money on this technology. And so they have those resources there to protect the people that are using their software. Will they? I'm sorry. I'm just not that confident that, these corporations are going to defend literally every single person that potentially gets sued. I think what's going to happen instead is that if there are a ton of different lawsuits and as of right now, you have the New York Times actually sued Microsoft and sued OpenAI. If this thing goes forward and this moves up and goes to like the Supreme Court or something like that, and a decision is made saying, look, your database, which is using scraped data, contains tons of copyright and trademark infringement material. You need to scrap that database and start all over. That is a possibility. There may be a point where like a court of law says, look, you have so much infringing material, you can't fix this situation. You need to start over. Now, I think we're far away from that point, but the lawsuits have like piled up. There are a lot of lawsuits that are being filed. This is why you need to look at kind of some of the alternatives, like Adobe Firefly. Great option. Like they have open source images, they have licensed images. You can use their platforms and not worry about being sued because it's their material. Like the results are from them. Like it's their licensed content. What are they going to sue you for using their own stuff? Like that's not going to happen because they want to keep you as a customer, as a client. So you look for certain resources that have licensed content and use the results of that. The alternative is make sure you're doing a trademark search or a copyright search for the results that you're getting if you're using it in a business sense. If you're using it for a personal sense, look, this is not legal advice for anybody. If you're using it for a personal thing, like you're sending a Christmas card to your parents, what are the chances of you being sued for sending a Christmas card to your parents? Like very low. Like what are the damages? Practically non-existent, right?
Yeah.
So who's going to hire a lawyer like me at $600 to $1,000 an hour to bring a lawsuit against you for a Christmas card? Like I'm not telling people to infringe. What I'm saying is measure what you're doing and be smart about it. If you're using it for a business reason, if it's going to be used within your company, make sure you're doing the trademark searches, the copyright searches. Make sure your marketing team understands these issues. They may not even be aware. I've talked to tons of people, like 75, 80% of people are not even aware of these legal issues at all.
Yeah, no, I find it really interesting with also the third-party tools that are built on top of OpenAI's API and all this, and some are better than others. I really like content at scale. It's just a tool that you can write really in-depth blog posts. I would be interested to know if you, let's say I take this video that we are doing right now, talking about the legal aspects of AI and how all this affects, and I can write probably based on this interview here, I can probably do like a 3,000, 4,000 word blog post. I put this YouTube link inside a software and then it spits out like this really amazing blog post. Would that be something, if I add something to it? It's basically our content. We are creating it right here and it's using just this. Would that be something I could potentially have copyright, or could people just steal this content from my blog afterwards?
Well, here's the thing. All right. So this is where it's really important. And I've got a program that actually talks about it. It's called the Protect Your Idea Challenge.
Yeah.
This is really important for you guys to understand. If you're bloggers and you're good at it, your content is important. All right. There are people that will take your content and then create 30-second segments and do entire writings and then get a following and subscription services based on your content. That's called copyright infringement. Like the mere fact that Navid right now is recording these things means that he owns the copyright. Okay. So in and of itself, once you record, once it's fixed, now there's certain legal rights that are associated with somebody who's speaking, like a guest. Like there are certain things that there are certain legal rights that come associated with that. But the fact that it matters, Navid owns the recording, right? So there's certain, under copyright law, he technically owns the copyright, even though he has not filed a federally registered copyright. Like he hasn't filed for an application. And by the way, just so people know, it costs $65. It's like the cheapest version of protection that's out there for intellectual property law on the copyright website. It's not expensive. So if you have something that's really important, invest the $65 and get a federal registration. That's how you stop others from using your content. So, but what you want to do is on your videos, put the copyright notice, like let people know this is protectable under federal rights, under federal copyrights, right? Circle C, the year and the owner, or write copyright and then the year and the owner. Like that's how you write your copyright notice. You don't have to file for federal registration to have legal rights under copyright. So if we've got like a video, it's up on YouTube, we own the copyright on that. Somebody comes over, transcribes that, that's copyright infringement. Somebody grabs clips of it, that's copyright infringement. So
But what if
you
I
actually
put that into the AI tool, content at scale, that basically based on, it's not just a transcript. That's where I think we talked a little bit about this before, because we are changing it. I mean, it's not just going to be exactly the way we are speaking it. It's not just a transcription, right? It's going to be a free-flowing blog post with headlines and things like that. And actually, based on this session, we just take a link. Content at scale does a really good job at it. I don't have to change all that much. And because I enjoy creating these, this is my main piece of content. Then I go into an AI tool and I create the other content that I don't want to spend all this time. That took me forever before. And that's actually how I speed up my workflow. That's so I'll be curious to hear what you say.
I do exactly the same thing.
Okay. I'm not alone then. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So think of it this way. You know how it adds the subtitles for you automatically, or like emojis, or like you put like an image on the bottom that's responding to what you're doing, or you're talking about a certain scene and the image shows up and all that stuff there. That modification to the original work includes the original work, right? So us speaking here are there. So anybody who grabbed any of that, that would be considered copyright infringement.
Of course.
Clearly that would be copyright infringement.
You cannot take my long video to take someone else. I mean, take it to Opus Clip or one of these tools. And okay, I own this now because I clipped it up. I can do this and I can send it to you and you can post all over your social media or someone else. Or they can take, I think YouTube has something so you can take shorter segments of a video if I allow that or something like that. So
that's right.
That's very possible, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So the original copyright owner, the original blogger, the original person who's doing the vlog, those people are the ones that own the copyright. So they can cut it, clip it, modify it, do whatever they want. Now, if you take that and you upload it into, let's say, like Veed, right? Veed is very simple to use. It's adding subtitles. You can do clips. You can do all sorts of stuff. You still own the copyright on that because it's substantially the same work. It's just adding a little bit of stuff. Now, what happens though, if I take my video and I now upload it into, let's say, there's some new programs that have come out where you can take the person's face and you can replace their face with somebody else, right? And you can
like
change
Jen, for example. You can do this. You can even have your lips synced in different languages and stuff like that, which is really
cool. That's exactly right. So you can change the audio. All right. So this is what one influencer said to do. And this is copyright infringement. I hate to tell people this, but this is copyright infringement. This is what they said. If you want to increase your sales online, you go to Instagram, you look for the top 5 individuals who are like influencers on Instagram. You take their videos, right? You use this AI program to replace the face. Then you take the voice, the audio, you replace the audio, right? So now you've got the same video that's been playing with a new face and a different audio. And now you create a new account on Instagram using their videos, but with a different face, with different audio, right? That's called copyright infringement. You cannot do that. And so people would do that. But the reason why he said to do that was because now you can create 5 fake accounts. And now with those 5 fake accounts, you can increase followers because it's already known that that video content results in a lot of followers. So you use very similar hashtags and use very similar descriptions, but it's a different face and different audio. So now you're increasing the followers in those accounts. And then once the followers get high enough, now you start offering products for sale or services for sale on those fake accounts. That's copyright infringement. You can't do that. But influencers don't know that. And so what happens is people that are become pretty big in this area reach out to people like myself. And they say, hey, they're stealing all my content. I'm making all this money on this. And all of a sudden it's going to this other person. And that's when we send the cease and desist letter over to them and say, hey, back off. And by the way, you owe them the attorney's fees and you owe them X amount of damages. Otherwise, we're going to court.
So when you discover something like that and you are, let's say you're a course creator, you're a YouTuber, you create content, should you just contact the lawyer immediately or should you just send them, hey, this is my content, or what is the best approach to this?
That's a great question. This is what I tell people to do. And again, not legal advice. Okay. Talk to
the reason I've had before AI was a big thing in the content creation world. I have a course called Virtual Summit Mastery before. We sold a lot of it. And of course, with even if you don't have the biggest program, sometimes it goes all around the web, and people are like putting on these download websites for free. And I think even if you're a bigger entrepreneur, I see these programs all the time. And I
Mm.
even if they work with lawyers like yourself, they're still on these websites. It's very difficult to come around this, and that's not you're just basically taking the program and uploading it somewhere. I think that was the initial
Right.
thing. Now with AI, I think this is just becoming maybe a bigger problem because now they're not just stealing the courses, maybe they're stealing all their content.
Yeah. So one of the things you want to do is actually there's a number of things you can do because I represent a bunch of parties who actually have
Mhm.
a lot of e-courses
Yeah.
and personally people have been asking me to create more e-courses so that they can, instead of waiting for my next presentation, they can just watch it anytime, day or night,
Mm.
right? So we
Cool.
started doing that as well. So this is what you do. You've got your copyright notices that are provided at the beginning. You've got your copyright notice that's available during the video, your copyright notices at the end. There are certain platforms that you can use that become very difficult to record off of what you have. However, there are certain AI platforms that once it's playing, you can use the AI in the background to just grab the content. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, is it possible that somebody will steal your content? Absolutely. I mean, you can put up all sorts of barriers and there's always a chance that somebody else steal it. But what you want to do is minimize the chances of it being scraped. Okay. And as of right now, a number of these companies like OpenAI and others are allowing you to communicate with them to say, hey, I don't want you scraping my content. Like, this is my site. This is my content. You can't have access to this. And so there are websites that you can go to give the addresses for your content so that these companies won't grab your content. And then there's other things you can do, like when
Like
you're
what
doing search.
websites would you go? I mean, if you can share some examples where people
Oh,
could go.
what I can do is grab some of the list and I'll send it to you so you
Yeah.
can actually share
Okay,
share
sure.
it
I
with
can
them.
share it in
Yeah,
the description
I'll
as
share
well.
some links for
You
you.
have also a great ebook I just wanted to mention. So if anyone during this session, I put that in the description as well. So you can download Peter's ebook. It has a lot of great tips when it comes to all of this we are talking about here.
Yeah, so that ebook, I would honestly, I would take a look at this, everyone, because it's covering the top 3 legal concerns for AI users. So it's kind of some of the things that we've talked about, plus some other things, because when you're dealing with artificial intelligence, there's really 3 main categories I tell people to think about. Number 1 is what's coming in. Number 2 is what's coming out. And then number 3 is what can you own? And so understanding that, if you can understand that well and train your teams in it, you can be highly successful in using artificial intelligence within your company. You just need to know how to use it. And so we touch base on some of that, within the ebook.
For
So
sure.
I would, and Navid is giving that out for free, and we're giving that out for free to all you guys. So enjoy it.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So again, what we're not saying is stop using these programs. What we're telling you is think of it this way. A scalpel can do amazing work in the hand of a surgeon. It could also do incredible damage in the hand of a child. Let's not be children when it comes to this kind of technology. Let's become more educated so that we're using it well and we can do incredibly well in the business world. Because I use this technology within my law firm, I use it within my educational institution, and it's allowed me to advance very fast.
Yeah.
However, I don't put any confidential information there for clients. When I'm using Otter AI, to actually transcribe and create a summary and then create an email for clients and other people, there's nothing confidential in there. Like, I'm not using health information, no social security information, no bank information, nothing confidential. And because of that, I don't care if somebody gets access to it. Like, it just doesn't matter to me. And you know what? Probably 60% of the people watching this don't care.
Yeah.
They're thinking, well, I don't care if somebody sees what I'm uploading. What they might care about though is when they get a knock on the door saying, hey, cease and desist using my content, using my logo or my trademark or my image or my book or my, any of that, because I'm going to sue you. Or even worse, they just get sued. And that's what's happening right now. People aren't even giving warnings. They're just suing.
Yeah.
So we got to make them aware.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there's a lot that goes into this when it comes to creating content because people they are at one point they're using ChatGPT, but there's other tools as well where you can upload your data. I think that is really interesting because ChatGPT, unless you're in the enterprise, because most of you, if you are a content creator, most likely are using the free plan, or which I recommend, the $20 a month plan is a great investment, I think, for just getting started with AI. But there's a lot of other tools where you can upload like databases. There's, I've used a tool called Searchy. There's Coachbox AI, and you can basically upload more. I'm not saying confidential information, but maybe something that goes into how you deal with your team, like SOPs in your business and things like that. And I think, at least from how I understand this is actually more protected within what you're uploading there, because that's a closed environment. So can you
That's
talk a little bit
exactly
about
right.
that?
That what you said is 100. Everybody needs to listen to what Navid just said. What he just said is the most important thing is you want a closed environment. That's the key. The language is a closed environment. So something
Yeah.
like ChatGPT Enterprise, it's wonderful in that it's supposed to be a closed environment. Your content is not being uploaded into the main database and made available to third parties. But people are complaining that the experience with it is very dry. It's very boring because
Mhm.
it's not learning. Like it's not taking the content that you're giving to it, adding it to the database,
Yeah.
gaining new things and giving you results. So
Is that mostly for bigger corporations? I mean, the enterprise
yeah,
is mostly for bigger corporations. Then we have the
right.
playground, which is kind of boring as well. That's like if you're building apps and things like that, or building on top of the API and all this, then you can play around there. But I think for the average user, you're usually in the main interface, which is, I mean, I hope they improve that and add a search. That's actually why all these other tools, they are thriving, because they have a great user interface. You can search, you can sort things. I mean,
Mhm.
that's really why I use other tools as well. And then I come back to ChatGPT for ideation and maybe some other things as well. But I do like the plugins and the GPT store, which is I think is a game changer. If that can, that's actually a great legal thing to speak about too, with the GPT store, because I think there was some leaks when that came out actually, and there was some big issues there. I don't know if you actually saw some of this, Peter. I'm sure you're
Yeah,
very
I
aware.
saw something. You just, yeah, you just have to be careful, and
Yeah.
when you're looking at these different platforms and the way they work with each other. So, I mean, think of it this way: something that's
Yeah.
kind of related to what you're talking about here
Yeah.
is that a lot of the AI programs will work together, right?
Yeah.
So, as an example, you can use ChatGPT to create a prompt that you can then upload into Midjourney to give you the
Yeah.
perfect result, right?
Mhm.
It's so if you're using AI to talk to AI, there is no way you're going to own the result under copyright law. Just to be clear, like people are trying to find a way around the system. It it doesn't work that way. Like
Yeah.
AI to AI does not result in any ownership now rights. Now, there are issues with some of these programs where what you upload actually does become available to third parties. We already talked about that.
Mhm.
But there's also an issue where there's this doctrine that has to do with not being able to pull content out. So basically, a violation of DARPA rules, right? Which is the like Data Privacy Rights Act. And this is why programs like ChatGPT are not legal in certain countries. Like
Mm.
you can't even use them because once you put stuff in, it's gone. And that's the way a neural network works. It gets smarter and smarter based on what information you put, right? So it just gets better and better and gives you better and better results. That's the way that neural networks work. Well, with some of these add-ons and some of these plugs and all these things that are being created, the problem is that you may have certain levels of privacy associated with the platform that you subscribe to, but the one that you're using that connects to it doesn't have that level of privacy. And you don't even realize that. So this is something nobody's really talking about. So you might use enterprise, but then you're using another platform with enterprise that doesn't have privacy that enterprise has. It's now taking the results that you're getting, and it's making those results available to the public, even though you're using the first platform, which technically is private. So you've got to look at these plugins and see
Yeah.
what are they doing. Like we have to be more responsible, right? So
Yeah.
it's just it means we need more due diligence internally before we start adding other AI programs. Because honestly, right now there's a new AI program every day, like
Yeah. No,
if not
I mean,
more
I've
than.
I've tested, I think, hundreds, and I've tested
Yeah.
a lot of plugins, but I have my set of tools that I come back to. And as I mentioned before, one of them I really like. And I also like Vocable is a new one by one of our speakers, Iman. It's really good, I think. And and then content at scale, because it's doing such a great job with blog posts and long form content that I haven't seen anywhere else. And what I think they are doing, which you can maybe speak to a little bit, behind the scenes, they have all these prompts, because you don't need to put in, all these prompts like ChatGPT. You might just enter a keyword and it spits out this amazing article. Or as I mentioned before, you can also take a YouTube link and it spits out this great article. You don't need to do too much. You can,
Right.
add your stuff. You can add many of your own articles in there, and then it will write more in your voice. Of course, you can do a lot of tweaking like that, but you don't need to prompt it like ChatGPT or go back and forth. It's like one click, and then you get this 3,000, 4,000 word blog post. I think in this case, would you argue that this is not really training the model, because it's actually something they have behind closed doors, similar to when you're uploading your data? I think that's more of a
Yeah.
closed environment.
Yeah. So the functionality is actually on the back end. So what's happening is that there's multiple ways of training these things. I'm an electrical engineer by nature. I'm also a programmer. So that's my
Cool.
background. And then I'm an IP attorney. So I'm a trademark attorney, copyright attorney, patent law attorney, adjunct professor. Like I love this
That's
stuff.
a great mix. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
the technology actually makes it so that it becomes more savvy because you understand how technology works.
Yeah.
Well, the making the data available and the functionality associated with the software available is typically pre-programming, right? So there's something that's in the system already. So that can be it can be trained. Something like, as an example, way back in the day, they had a thing called Dragon Naturally Speaking, right? I was one of the beta testers ages ago when it first came out. And so there's a training phase. So the software gets to know your language, gets to know your accent, gets to know how you speak. Now that it's trained, it can now go forward and do work, right? And so then it's just tweaking and doing slight modifications, but it had to be trained first. Some of these programs, some of these AI programs that are coming out already have pre-training done, right? So some of them are done on their own back end, but then meaning their own people trained it. But then some of them you need to train them. So the experience tends to be more fun when you're involved in the training somewhat, because this way it gets to know who you are. And then when you type in like 1 word, 2 words, it already knows who you are. And then boom, it's like you got a 5,000 page writing that took you 20 seconds. Like, I mean, talk about efficiency. That is amazing. Now, the question is, who owns what's created? Now, when you use some of these AI programs, it tells you that you own whatever is created. They tell you that you can own these for commercial purposes. Commercial purposes means you can sell it. You can, make a financial profit. You can use it in interstate commerce, right? However, you can't own the copyright because the AI is what created it. So what does that mean? What does that mean to us? Here's what that means. That means if you take that and you now sell that on Amazon as a book, or you create a book and it becomes a top seller. Here's the issue. You don't own the copyright. That means I can copy it. My daughters can copy it. My wife can copy it. Navid can copy it. Anybody can copy it. And you can't say a word about it
How
because
do
you're
people
not the
know
copyright
that
owner.
how do people know that I've taken it from AI? Okay, this is very important. If I add my own stories and things to it. So it's not just what let's say content at scale or Vocable or one of these AI platforms gave me. I mean, that it's based on a link or based on a keyword, whatever that is. I'm then taking that and actually adding in imagery. I'm adding in some personal stories. I mean, that's really unique to me. Do I own this? I mean, that would
Yeah.
be, I mean,
So
no one can
remember,
know.
it comes back to where we started. When we
Yeah.
started the entire conversation, it comes back to the level of creativity. Does what's being added come to the level
Yeah.
of being a new created work, or is AI basically creating this, right? So let's say AI spits out a 5,000
Yeah.
word document,
Yeah.
but it's being created based on my own thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So let's say I have this idea. There's a forest ranger. He gets lost in this new area. He finds a portal. He steps in the portal and he ends up being like 500 years in the past, right? And no, he starts to try to find his way back to find another portal to get out. That's my storyline. Like, it just took me 7 seconds to say that. I say that to this AI program and it spits out a 5,000 word story.
Yeah.
Do I own the story? No. because what I said was a thought. That was a
Yeah.
thought. A 5,000 page thing came out. Now I've got this 5,000 page thing. So now my next step is I'm going to go and I'm going to now work on modification of this thing. So what happens is I now get a 5,000 word document, but I want to own a book. Like I want a book on this, right? So I create a 5,000 page or 5,000 word document from just speaking for 7 seconds.
Mm.
Now this result that I have, I can't own the copyright on. However, what if I modify the result now? So now I try to carve it into something that I truly own, right? The problem is that I would have to add a level of creativity. The creativity level would have to be high enough that I actually create something that's copyrightable. That's tough to do. So what I tell people instead is if you're going to create a story, like you're writing a story, you get writer's block and you're trying to figure out what's the next thing I can add to the next chapter. I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. You can type some of the thoughts in ChatGPT or in another program and just ask it for the next chapter in the book and then look to see different examples. And it gives you some examples of different storylines.
Yeah.
Now it can break that writer's block and you can go, oh, okay, got it. This new character is introduced and does blah, blah, blah. Got it. Now you create your own, you're adding to your story based on what was suggested. Because copyright is not ownership of an idea. It's the fixed form of the idea,
Mhm.
right? So you just got a suggestion from this AI software. You can take that suggestion and now turn it into your own, right?
Yeah.
But what you can't do is take a 5,000 word document and then try to change a word here, change a word there, and think you own the copyright. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's really interesting what these different tools can do because some is like one click, right? But I think it's worse if you're going into, let's say, ChatGPT and doing this, because then if you get a blog post out, maybe there's going to be a similar one on someone else's blog if you're doing something similar, like with a similar keyword or similar structure. But if you're using a more tool in a closed environment, maybe content at scale, at least I could assume it's not going to happen that this is coming to someone else, this exact same post. I mean, that would be strange. I mean, I hope that's not happening because they are using it on their own site a lot. And basically, Julia, which is also on the summit, she's basically using this to add her own experience to this as well. That's kind of, but what you said, you cannot add maybe you have this 5,000 word blog post and you're adding like a little bit of your experience. Maybe that's not enough, I think, for owning
Yeah.
the
So
copyright.
if let's say somebody does a recording and then what you're doing is you're taking, let's say like a 20-second clip of it or a 30-second clip of that recording, and then
Mhm.
you're adding your own comments and you're talking about this. What you're talking about now is something that's called fair use,
Mhm.
right? And so what can you use of what somebody else has created? Like
Yeah.
that falls into this doctrine called fair use. And there's 4 factors that you typically look at for fair use to determine whether or not there's a potential of there being like copyright infringement. And one of them is like the purpose and character of the use. Another one's like the nature of the use. Then it's like the amount that you're copying. And then finally, the last factor is what's the actual effect on the actual copyright owner themselves. Like you look at these factors and then you measure them to see whether this falls into fair use. Now, if something falls into fair use, then you can use what other people have,
Of course.
right? But fair use is predominantly for educational purposes, like news. It's not where you're making money. Like if I'm doing a challenge, which
Mhm.
I'm doing the Protect Your Idea challenge in a few weeks, right?
Yep.
If I'm doing that, and what I do is I take major content from other people and I use it in an ad to get people's attention. And then I say, okay, click here. Like that's copyright infringement. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Now you can take a line of what somebody says, right? Like Grant Cardone saw some of the stuff that I do, and he made a really cool comment, and I've got it as a quote, and other people have as well. But so I take that quote. I can do that because I'm talking about here's a quote from such and such. This was a subject matter. This is their name. They said it on this date. That's fine. That's not an issue. But once I start like grabbing entire portions of somebody else's content and throwing it into mine,
Mhm.
now you can run into potential lawsuit
Yeah.
issues. And so you have to see if it falls into what's called fair use. Everybody should just remember the term fair use.
Yeah,
And
but you
that's
have
where you
seen
want
this
to,
on YouTube. If you're like, I mean, if you're a creator, I'm sure you see all these YouTube channels, and they are monetizing, by the way. And I think there's sometimes a gray zone in the way some people are using this. But some people they have the 10 laws of or the 10 laws to success from Robert Greene or things like that, and they're basically clipping other people's in-depth podcasts and taking different clips from them, and then they might have their own 1 hour video, but based on a lot of different clips. There's a lot of work that goes into creating something like that. That is awesome. It's not
yeah.
just using an AI tool that puts this together. It doesn't work. You have to have a great editor and things like that. But in this case, I guess you are owning your work if you're adhering to the fair use policy. But still, you could, I guess, depending on the policy on YouTube, you could probably still monetize this with AdSense and things like that. At
Well,
least
you
that's what I've
can.
seen.
So here's the thing with fair use, you got to be really careful, guys, because here's the issue is that with fair use, you're already committing, basically you're committing copyright infringement and you're trying to find a way out. That's
Mhm.
really what the issue is. You are copying something. That's a fact. Now you're trying to find out whether the way that you're using it is fair and you're not going to be
Mhm.
legally liable for copying that content. And so let's say somebody like Pedro Deo or Grant Cardone or like
Mhm.
Tony Robbins or like, or even you, Navid, you've got
Uh,
this quote that or that's even better. These are the five main pillars of blah, 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 blah. And you grab that and you throw it into your training and
mhm.
you start teaching, you create an entire teaching about the 5 pillars. You can run into some problems. Like, that's their work. Now, they don't own the idea. Just to be clear, they don't own the idea because you can't own an idea. You can only own the fixed form of the idea. So if you take their text, that could be copyright infringement. If you take their images that illustrate the steps, that could be copyright infringement. Um, if they file a patent on a method of doing something and you use that method, you could be sued for that. But the general idea of there being something and you're making reference to that thing, that in of itself, you might not get in trouble for. So you need to make sure you're talking to somebody who understands this, where you can look at exactly what you're doing, talk to them and say, okay, this is what I'm doing. Is this an issue? Like, do you think this is an issue? Is this a problem? What should I be thinking about? Right. But in general, ideas are not protectable.
Yeah.
That's why I literally intentionally called the challenge I do. I call it the Protect Your Idea Challenge because
Right.
you can't protect an idea. Most
So
people don't actually know that. So like maybe like 2% of the people that are in the
yeah,
public go, oh, I get it. I get it. It's actually a joke. The name of the challenge is actually a joke.
it's
It's like you
funny.
actually can't protect your ideas. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny.
One question is if you should disclose, similar to when you're promoting, let's say, an affiliate offer. Maybe I'm promoting something of yours. I say I'm affiliate because I really like what Peter is doing. All right.
Mhm.
But what about when you're using AI, let's say for a blog piece or like a video, whatever you're doing? Should you mention then that artificial intelligence has been played a role in creating this piece of content? I mean, I don't know what you've seen. I don't think a lot of people are doing this yet, to be
I
honest.
can tell you that. I mean, that's actually a really good question. So I can tell you that stating in a court of law that artificial intelligence created what you're being sued for will not get you out of a lawsuit. That court doesn't care. Court does not care. However,
Yeah, I meant more in terms of like for your audience, but so because we were talking before, how can someone actually know that like if I have a really great blog post on my site that has images and maybe I use content at scale for most of it, but then I added my story, so it's like exactly the steps I would personally use for describing this thing, maybe how to start an online business or how to do this and that. I would actually use these steps and I've added my personal story into this. I mean, it's actually my steps, but maybe according to like what you have described, it mostly came from the AI software. and I just added to this, maybe not enough for this to actually be 100%, something I created from scratch.
Right.
But so should I then add a disclaimer that this was
Well,
AI created, or should I just not care? Because no one, I don't think people would actually know that this is AI created if it was actually
that was my
if it
point.
reads like a human.
Yeah, that's actually what my point was, and that's why I was
Yeah,
saying, however, that
yeah.
that's my point, what you just said.
Mm,
First of all, what you have to figure out is why are you notifying the public that this is created by artificial intelligence? If you're filing, as an example, if you're filing a copyright with the federal, with the Copyright Office, you're under obligation to telling them if it's AI or not, because
yeah.
that's a federal regulation. So you
Okay.
can't fake it. You can't say, "Oh no, I created it all." Get a copyright. That's committing fraud on the Copyright Office. You
Okay.
can't do that.
Sure.
But for the general public, why do you need to tell them? I mean,
Yeah.
what exactly are you trying to benefit? What's the gain? Now, if you're in an AI audience and you want to show people, hey, check it out. I created this using AI
Yeah.
and that has certain clout to it. Fantastic. You're not going to remove liability. So it's not for that purpose.
Mhm.
So then the question is, why are you actually mentioning that you're using AI at all? Like, as an
I've
example,
I've seen some discussions around this. That's why I asked it. I don't plan
yeah,
to do it because I all the content I do is basically I'm doing stuff like this, and then I'm taking my own thoughts and ideas. So when I'm putting something on my blog, it doesn't read like an AI or something like that. I might have used artificial intelligence to do it faster, like
yeah.
yourself and others that are smart and want to get ahead quicker. I mean, that's just what we should do. We should embrace new technology, but we should do it the right way. And we need to obviously be aware of the legal implications. Otherwise, it can get screwed pretty
Well,
quickly.
I mean, think of it this way. When somebody actually has, you do this with your cell phone, right?
Yeah.
You dictate something, it automatically creates a text and it sends a text over to others, right? It has a disclaimer on the bottom that says this was automatically created by transcription software, right? So it's the same thing. It's like this was created using artificial intelligence. Like you're telling people now legally it has no bearing. It doesn't really do anything. However, it does condition the audience so that if they see certain things that don't gel, or if they see certain things that, that's not the language Peter would usually use. But I'm telling them,
Mm.
hey, this was created by artificial intelligence. Like we just had a meeting. And none of it was confidential. I automatically had it create a summary and spit it out to you. And it says it
Mhm.
in the email. It says, this was created by Otter AI as a summary of our last meeting. Hopefully this was helpful, period. Now
Yeah.
people will see that, oh, you're using artificial intelligence. Okay, cool. That's fine.
Yeah.
As long as it's not an issue. Like if you're covering confidential stuff,
Mhm.
that's a major issue.
I
So
think another thing that is even very interesting. I mean, that's been around before. People, what is the distinction with like when you model someone else? Like you see someone, I really like what Peter is doing, right? I really like his content. I like his LinkedIn posts or whatever he produces content. I like his videos. Like, can you actually copy a style and then it's not getting into trouble? Maybe you put that into, maybe you have a style that you use or someone else that you like, and you put that into AI and try to break it down. Is that something that you can get in trouble for? Or, I mean, if it's your content, but you're using a similar format or style like someone else?
yeah, styles in themselves are not an issue. What the issue is, where is the content being gained from?
Hmm.
So if somebody is getting my voice, that voice came from somewhere. If somebody gets my image, that image came from
Yeah.
somewhere. That's copyright infringement. All that stuff is copyright
Yeah.
infringement. Now, my style, as an example, you can create something in Midjourney using the style of Picasso, right?
Yeah.
That's allowable, right? That's not an issue.
But
There's a
should you do
style of
it?
painting.
Ethical implications, though. I mean, I have had some people talking about Midjourney and tools like that before. I typically don't like to use like very famous artists when I'm doing anything in Midjourney. Why should I? I mean, I don't need to do it for my blog. I want to keep it in my brand and my style. Usually, I do more photorealistic stuff, but you can do these like robot style AI images as well. Looks really cool, or more futuristic. So I
That's
don't
the
need
best,
to.
honestly,
Yeah,
for your audience. What I would say is if you're trying to create your own brand, get your own recognition, get people to start following you so that they can gain the authenticity of what you have created, then why are you copying somebody else's stuff? Like
yeah.
create your own, like come out
Hmm.
with some. Now, I understand that there's an advantage to obtaining social presence in a faster manner. And so you're trying to follow something that's done by other people. I get that. But if you're using the same words as another person, you're going to become known because you're like the other person. You're not your own person.
Yeah.
Right. So why
Very
not
important.
look, every single person is, here's the way I put it when I mentor people. People are wonderfully and fearfully created. Like every single person, it has certain creativity, certain things that other people do not have. Why in the world would you want to deprive the world of that thing? Let other people see who you truly are. You can use these tools for them to learn who you truly are in different ways, but you don't need to mimic everybody else. You can learn from them, learn from some of the best people in the industry. Absolutely. But let the people hear your voice. Your
Yeah.
voice is important. Your message is important. What you're creating is important. You are important. So why deprive the world of that importance by just copying somebody else? It's
No,
just not the way to
100%.
go.
I completely agree. And I think it's really interesting that I mean, what I think if you are a newer creator and you don't have maybe too much out there, you can for sure look at some, creators a few steps ahead of you, or even some top creators, see kind of what posts they are putting out on LinkedIn or Instagram. And you can take that into ChatGPT and break this down, or even newsletter formats have done it for, but don't copy their content. I think that's what we're talking about. You can plug in your own content in a certain format, because a lot of people are doing this. I'm sure you see like what's working on LinkedIn. You have a hook, and then you have basically storyline, and you have maybe one main ID in there, and basically you can break it down. You can take maybe Justin Welsh post or someone you like and break that down in ChatGPT. It does a great job, and then you put in your own content and you have something unique that you have created. Actually, it's just based on a format that is a proven format. I think
Here's
it's good.
something that everybody has to understand though, and people don't understand this. You have to realize that the second that you grab somebody else's content and upload it into anything, that's copyright infringement. Period. You can be
Interesting. So, babe, you
that in and
cannot
of
even
itself.
for LinkedIn because that's
That's
public
copyright
already.
infringement. That is
No, I
because
mean, then basically everyone is doing this mistake. How can they know this then? I think that's a really interesting thing that no one is talking about really. I mean,
and
everybody's
that's
taking.
why I'm here. This is
Yeah, I
literally
mean,
what
I'm
I'm trying
glad
to
you
make
mentioned
people.
this as before we wrap up this, because I think
Yeah.
we are taking content from LinkedIn or Facebook, and people do this all the time,
Yeah.
uploading into ChatGPT or any AI tool.
Mhm.
So what would you recommend, or what can happen if you do things like that? I mean,
Yeah. So if
can they
you
know?
are, I mean, I represent multiple parties that have like basically they're suing other people for doing exactly that right now.
Mhm.
They're large, more well-known individuals, and what they are doing is they're building plans for enforcing their copyrights against multiple parties, because what's happening is other people are grabbing their online courses, their video chats, their vlogs, and they're creating databases off of that, or they're like learning off of their content. The second that you take their content, you upload it into anything, that's copyright infringement.
Interesting.
Immediately, that it's called copyright. So it's a right to copy. Second you make a copy, boom, you can be sued. So
So
if you're trying to learn from others, then you need to take the time to learn, like look at the videos, see what their style is, learn things like that, and then create based on that. But what you can't do is, oh, I see a really cool video from such and such. I'm going to upload that into this program and have it analyze it. Second you uploaded that, that's a copy. You can be sued
yeah.
for that, just for that alone.
So interesting. I mean, I mean, of course, there are different grades of this, but like if you take someone's online course that's like paid content, definitely don't do this. But like I mean, in the public, a lot of people are doing this. I think they haven't even realized before
Right.
AI. A lot of people were like sharing stuff and things like that from someone else. But I guess now with these databases, as they're learning, basically anything you put out there, you train the model. So I mean, it makes sense what you're saying. I just think a lot of the AI influencers, so to speak, they haven't talked about this at all. I
Yeah. So
think
what
that
you want to look at is look at the platform. If you look at the platform and the terms and conditions on the platform, certain platforms have made it so that whatever you upload now becomes publicly available. So that party cannot bring any legal rights against you.
yeah,
So what you do is you now use those platforms. So then anything that's on that platform is basically free game.
yeah,
And so what you need to do is do the due diligence to figure out what are the platforms that are out there that where you can go in and grab what you need to learn or to manipulate data or manipulate images or whatever. Like you just need to do homework for that. But
Mhm.
what you're seeing right now is a large number of copyright owners, trademark owners enforcing their rights against corporations and individuals because
Yeah.
they're tired of it. They're tired of these programs where people are just grabbing their stuff and they're not getting paid. Like to
Interesting.
create one challenge can take you a month and a half to come out with the perfect challenge,
Yeah.
right? That's a lot of work. That's a lot of hours of work. So somebody else can just come in, take one of the video days, upload it into like an AI program, grab some of the data and do their own thing with it. No, you can't do that. That's taking away from all the hard work that's been done. You just spent a lot of time creating this video. So
Yeah.
can somebody just come here, upload it, figure out your interview style, and then create their own course based on it? That's
I
not
mean,
fair to you.
yeah, I mean, it's what's interesting is that there are plugins like VoxScript. You can like take this into ChatGPT and you can get the full, analyze it. You can get the takeaways. You can do a lot of things with this. But
Mhm.
yeah, if you then, I mean, that's if it's my content, that's kind of what we talked about now. I mean, a lot of people are doing this for other videos and to
Well,
get
look at
content.
TikTok. Look at
Yeah,
TikTok. TikTok is based on copyright infringement. I
yeah,
mean, somebody else's video is playing, right? You can take the audio from theirs, copy their audio, make it an audio file, and create your own video from that, right?
yeah.
But if you look at the terms and conditions for a lot of these programs, the advantages of being able to use their program is that you're surrendering certain legal rights.
Hmm.
And so you
Yeah,
need to figure that out beforehand. What are the platforms that allow you to grab any content that you want? And if you can figure those things out, then you can do whatever you want.
got it.
But those tools that you're talking about are to make it so that you can get better and better at what you do. You just interviewed like an attorney of 25 years on blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
You upload that thing, and now you can see this is the style, this is what's done, this is where there were long pauses, this is where there was like intonation increase, it decreased. Like
yeah.
you can see all that, which
Yeah.
benefits you.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I think for a lot of people watching, this has been pretty game changing what you have shared so far. We're gonna work towards wrapping this up. But any tools that you like, we have talked a lot about tools here, but like anything that you say, okay, this is what you can use more safely, or anything that you recommend people get started. We've talked about ChatGPT, of course, but anything that you would like to direct people to when it comes to the tools and platforms.
Yeah, there are a number of programs that are out there right now that are adding filters into your system so as to decrease the chances of the public gaining access to your confidential information from your clients or anything like that. As an example, let's say you have a business and you're kind of concerned that some of your marketing people might be using AI software, using client information or other things that might be proprietary. There, you can add a privacy layer to things like ChatGPT and other programs out there. There are certain programs that are out there that provide a filter, and so you're probably going to want to check and just look for filters on this, and you should be able to find a few. I have found a few of them. Like one of
Which
them
one
is
is
like
your
private
favorite?
AI.
The top two or three that you use for?
Private AI is one of the ones that's pretty
Okay.
good. It adds a layer of what it does is anything that you're going to upload into any of these, anything that you're putting using anywhere where you're going to put a prompt, it
Mhm.
analyzes the prompt to see if there's any information in there that should not be made available to the public. And if it sees it, it's going to flag it for you. So when you implement something like that within your company, that's highly beneficial because you don't run the risk of being sued by your own clients, essentially, by making certain information of your clients available to the public. So that's one program that's actually pretty good that's out there. The other one, like we already mentioned, ChatGPT Enterprise, I think it's pretty good. I think it personally, this is just my own opinion. I think it needs some work. I think it needs to become more, there needs to be a way for it to learn, but not allow what it's learning from to become publicly available. Like there
Yeah.
should be, it shouldn't be like free version, everything that's entered becomes public. paid version, enterprise, nothing becomes public. There's got to be something in between.
Yeah.
That's what I'm waiting for. When that comes out, that's going to be the sweet spot, and that's where everybody's going to buy. Everybody's going to want that because now you got an entertaining program that you can utilize, you can grow with, it can learn from you. That I don't see that yet. Like right
Yeah.
now, the
No,
neural networks are just learning from everything and just making it publicly available, which is it's
yeah.
problematic. And
What do
so,
you think? Just as we kind of the final thing, what do you think about the future of AI? I need to ask, as you're a lawyer, I'm sure you see a lot of things. I feel that you're ahead of the curve because you've been in this space for so long, and even
yeah.
before this became really popular for content creators and in this world. I mean, you have been dealing with this for a long time. So, what do you see like in the near future, and maybe in the more long term future as well?
Yeah, I think the more immediate future, I think within the next 5 months, what you're going to see is the Copyright Office make a statement with regard to prompts. I think one of the biggest issues that's going to happen is prompt engineers, good prompt engineers, people know how to create prompts that are at the level where the result of the prompt is going to result in something that you can own under copyright law. When that shift happens, I believe the Copyright Office is going to come out and make a statement and make some modifications so that if prompts are at this level of creativity that results in whatever's created by the prompt being something that's copyrightable, those prompt engineers are going to be rich. Like they're going to make massive amounts of money because what will happen is those people will be swept up by all the big corporations, the people that are dealing with virtual worlds where, you have like full immersion, virtual 3D, full immersion systems. And so imagine having prompt engineers that can create entire worlds, and every world that's being created, every new character, every new experience you actually own.
Yeah.
See, right now with AI, what you're creating, you don't own it. But imagine that now you can use artificial intelligence, have the brains of like a remarkable prompt engineer who creates something so that the result of everything that they create is owned by the company that actually is employing the prompt engineer. That's where I think this is going. I think what you're going to have is a war of major corporations trying to sweep up the best prompt engineers in the world that are creating prompts that are resulting in copyrightable works. Because then those companies are going to own everything that's created. And now you're going to have a war, a virtual war. It's just going to be, there are people that are paying a lot of money for real estate in virtual worlds right now. I mean, it's just obscene. Like Nike has not only real sneakers, but they have virtual sneakers. There's like clothing lines in the virtual world that you can buy, like using real money and using virtual money. Well, it's a really big industry and it's getting bigger. So I think what's going to happen is within the next 5 months, I believe the Copyright Office is going to come out and make a statement or a change regarding AI and what you can actually own based on what's created. And I think that statement is going to lead to a major rush for more prompt engineers to come out. And then the people that are the best in that areas, they're going to be millionaires. They're just going to make tons of money. And so that's what I think in the immediate future. I think there's going to be a lot of regulation that's added, honestly, because I think that I think this hit the government as a surprise when, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, you mean all these records are now within other people's databases and scraped, and there's copyright infringement and trademark infringement. And now we're trying to resolve this issue. I think you're going to see some regulations come out. You're going to see new laws come out with regard to what is this true? Is this fair use? Like the scraping of the data, was that fair use? I don't think it's fair use at all in any way, shape, or form. But then you have something like the Google search engine, right? Well, that spider that's being utilized to index all these different websites is actually gathering data, but it's not doing it the same way that someone like OpenAI is doing to create a database. So I think you're going to see federal regulation in this area on, what's going to happen like with these companies that have these databases that are scraped. You're going to see some case law come out probably within the next 2 years, I would think, because I would think it's going to be expedited because so many people are affected by this. This is really big. And then when that court case comes out that says either yes, all the copyrightable works that's within these databases, you are legally responsible corporation to compensate all these people for copyright infringement, or you need to shut down your database and start over. That's going to affect the entire AI industry. It's
That would be insane if that happens. But let's see.
We'll
We'll see what
see.
happens. Yeah.
I think, people are comparing this to the music industry and the Napster deal and all, and
Mhm.
it's not the same. Like, in the music industry, you've got like BMI, ASCAP, you've got these different companies that provide licensing deals over to others, right? That doesn't necessarily exist for artists, for authors, there are certain groups that exist, but they don't all exist under one roof,
Yeah.
so you've got so many different things that are protectable on a copyright, like from books to images to photographs to music to videos to blogs to, I mean, there's so many things. And all these authors, all these creators do not belong to one or two corporations that can somehow funnel money to people who are creating works. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I don't see a Napster deal in this. I don't see an easier way out. I think one thing that might happen is there could be a mandate for a creation of an entity for everybody to then look. This is a stretch, but a creation of an entity for everyone to belong to, and then if there are legal issues, the complaints go to that legal entity, and the copyright, the funds are distributed accordingly. But if somebody's copying your stuff, you may not want to receive money. You may want them to just stop. I mean, part of your legal right, Navid, as a person who is creating an educational content, is you can say, "Hey, look, I don't want your $10,000. I don't want your $5,000. I want you to stop. I want to be the only one who uses my content." And so there really is no solution for that yet. So this is a very interesting time. If you're on top of this, like I'm talking to a lot of lawyers, speaking at different state bars and educating people in this area, because not a lot of people are familiar in this area, but it's a very interesting time. So we're all going to see a
No,
lot of things unravel very fast. And like I said, we called this like 10, 11 months ago. We said,
yeah.
this is going to be a minefield. So you got to figure out how to get through it.
Thanks so much, Peter, for coming on here. We are going to link up that ebook so you can get some more information. I think this was well over $1,000 in value. I mean, if you just implement some of what Peter shared here, you're gonna get a lot of value. I mean, maybe you want to leave people with some tips. We cover a lot here. Like if you just some takeaways or something that they can implement right away after this session to get
Yeah.
started, even if they don't have their own attorney or whatever, to just get started. Obviously, download that ebook. I linked that up below. But anything else you would like to add to this, Peter?
Yeah, I guess there's two things I would add. One is I would get familiar with the copyright website. It's copyright.gov, just copyright.gov. Go on their site. You can see how simple it is for registrations. I do a separate training on this, like I said, called the Protect Your Idea Challenge. People can look that up. But then separate, I would look at uspto.gov. It's the United States Patent and Trademark Office, uspto.gov. If you click on the trademark button, then you can click on search, and you can actually do some of the searches yourself at a top level. Now, this isn't stuff you should be relying upon for your entire corporation, right? Like, this is just top level quick searches that you can be doing to see if the name that you're going to use for your product, the name you're going to use for your business or your service actually belongs to another party, right? That's a very top level explanation of things you can do. If you want to learn more, like I said, Navid can give you more information on some of the programs that we put together. I would not stop using the programs. I would just learn how to use them responsibly.
Yeah.
And if you do that well, you should be highly successful, because I can tell you that I've been able to run an educational institution with one individual, like, because of AI.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it should take 4 or 5 people, and I'm able to do that with one individual. All right. And so we're going to bring in another individual, but the whole point is that you can be saving a lot of money if you know how to use these things. You can make things a lot more efficient if you know how to use these things.
You
So,
basically amplify yourself and you amplify your team as well. They can get more done. So it's not just, I mean, you can do it yourself in your business, but then you can hire a person. Then they can also get more done if you're training them on AI. And that's why I also enjoy bringing someone like you on, Peter, because you're not only a lawyer, you're actually a practitioner of AI. You're using it to build your education platform and you're a lawyer. So you see both sides of it. And I think that's
mm.
why this is really valuable, I think, to bring you on here. So I appreciate your time. I think this was really, really valuable for anyone. And leave your biggest takeaways in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you like content like this. Maybe I'll bring Peter on at some point in the future, when we have even more developments in the AI world. And really appreciate you coming on here, Peter. Thanks so much.
Oh, you're so welcome, Navid. My pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Ciao.